This lesson is on the inaugural address. The essential question for this lesson is, how does reading informational text differ from reading fiction? And as you read this complex text, I want you to think about the strategies that you're employing in order to make sense of the words and to grasp and comprehend the entire essay. By the end of this essay, you should be able to answer what is the first inaugural address, who wrote the first inaugural address, how did the first inaugural address affect Americans, and what are some persuasive appeals Roosevelt makes in his speech. So this is built on last week's lessons as well. We're covering standards for informational text. And I'd like to make a note for you. This lesson will ask you to independently read the inaugural address. If you feel as though that is too complex for you as an original reading independently, below this lesson there is a resource that is a read aloud. You can click on the symbol of the speaker and this text will be read aloud to you. So if you feel more comfortable having the words read aloud, you can use the resource after this lesson, but you'll still need to complete the questions within this lesson. So as a review, we talked about persuasive appeals last week, and we used another essay on libraries face a sad chapter to talk about how an author uses his point of view to persuade you to feel a certain way or do a certain thing. In the case of last week's essay, we were being persuaded to donate money to keep libraries alive because many of them are closing due to budget cuts. The author in last week's article appealed to our emotions and appealed to our sense of logic. We're going to add another layer of persuasive appeals to this week, talking about appealing to expertise, which is called ethos. So again, ethos is appeal to expertise, the E's and the E's, I always think. Pathos is appeal to your emotion, and logos is appeal to logic, L and L. So as you read this, I want you to think about how our author appeals and uses his expertise to appeal to the American citizens. How does he appeal to the American citizens' emotions throughout the speech? And finally, how does this president appeal to our American logic, especially during the Great Depression and what's going on? As I said, you're going to be reading the essay itself independently and answering questions as you read. You're going to do checks for understanding, and you're going to employ some of your reading strategies that we've been exploring throughout the year. However, first, it's important to know the title of this essay. It's called the First Inaugural Address. An inaugural address is an address to the United States that a president gives once he becomes president. In this case, Franklin Delano Roosevelt was voted president, and this is his first address to the American people as president. Who is Franklin Delano Roosevelt? Well, Franklin Delano Roosevelt had a relatively easy life until he was stricken with polio at age 39. And you guys may know him as the president who was in the wheelchair. Ironically, Roosevelt realized his potential as a leader only after falling victim to his illness. So from his tragedy became a wonderful victory. He became a president after being diagnosed with polio. He was twice elected governor of New York, and then in 1932 he defeated President Herbert Hoover to become the nation's 32nd president. Roosevelt won an unprecedented 4 terms as president. On March 4th of 1933, Roosevelt delivered his inaugural address to a nation that was close to despair. And earlier this week, we explored why they were close to despair. The stock market had crashed, and they were in the midst of the Great Depression. Americans sat by their radios to hear this new president address them, and it was a speech he had written himself. He led the nation through 2 great challenges, the Great Depression and then World War II. The war was almost over when he died in 1945. So I want you to take out a notebook And I want you to read the first section of this essay. And I want you to be able to answer the questions at the bottom of each slide. If you're able to do that, excellent. Your reading is excellent and you're employing those strategies we've been practicing. If you get to the bottom and you have no idea how to answer those questions, you might want to try rereading the paragraph in order to grasp and comprehend. The questions that you should be able to answer after reading this are, what are the occasion and purpose of this speech? And what are the common difficulties, and remember they're in quotes, so you might want to look for those as clue words, that he and his audience face. You can pause the recording here and read slide 1. And here we are at slide 2. I want you to do the same thing. Pay attention to words you may not know and bring them to class with you when we meet. Jot down some ideas that you come across as you read. And again, use those reading strategies to make sure that you're comprehending the words on the slide. By the end of reading these two columns, you should be able to answer, on whom does Roosevelt place the largest blame for the Great Depression? And what is the, quote, greatest primary task facing the nation? And again, because greatest primary task is in quotations, you can look for those clue words to help you answer that question. You may pause the video and do slide 2. For slide 3, I just want you to read this and take notes. So pause it here and read these 2 columns and take notes. What is he saying in these 2 columns? And in our final slide here, again, you should be able to, by the end of this, summarize the point of the entire speech. I'm going to ask you to dig a little bit deeper. Let's revisit those persuasive appeals. Reflecting on that speech, where does Roosevelt appeal to our expertise or his expertise and try to persuade us as American citizens? Go back and write down some ideas where he appeals to expertise, knowledge, or his talent as president. Then go back and think of some ways he appeals to our emotions. How does he tug at our heartstrings or appeal to the fact that we are poor, hungry, starving, many Americans at this point in time, jobless, homeless? How does he appeal to their emotions to try to raise the mood of America? And finally, I want you to think how he appeals to logic. How does he say that he's going to come in and lead the people towards a better life? Where does he appeal to Americans' logic? If you're able to do this extremely high level, pat yourself on the back. If not, you want to take some time and reread so that you can start to come to a better understanding of what the speech is about and how he used persuasive appeals in talking to America. Please join us in class on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday as we dig a little bit deeper into this speech for your test that will be on Friday.